Recasting Star Trek Enterprise for a movie reboot. News of an upcoming Star Trek Origin movie has led to concerns that Star Trek Enterprise could be retconned or rebooted. But who would play Captain Jonathan Archer, Scott Bakula, and his history-making crew? Set a century before the events of Star Trek, the original series, Enterprise escaped the effects of J.J. Abrams' rebooted Kelvin timeline. However, it's been announced that a new Star Trek Origin movie is being developed that will depict the events leading up to the formation of Starfleet and the Federation. This storyline sounds dangerously close to stepping on Enterprise's toes. While it's unlikely that 2025 Star Trek Origin movie will be a reboot that recasts Star Trek Enterprise's characters, its success could lead Paramount to revisit the adventures of the Enterprise NX-01. From the temporal Cold War to the Xindi incident and the Terra Prime terrorist organization, there are no shortage of Enterprise story arcs that could be adapted for a movie. Although an Enterprise reboot movie remains hypothetical, the idea of a new Star Trek Origin movie does make one ponder who in today's film and TV landscape could play Archer and the crew. Best known for playing Jim Hopper in Netflix's Stranger Things, David Habba could be a great fit for Shran in a Star Trek Enterprise movie reboot. While it would be very difficult to replace beloved alien actor Jeffrey Combs, David Habba has the dry wit and irascibility that made Shran such an enjoyable character. Having previously played Hellboy in the eponymous 2019 movie, David Habba would cut a more imposing figure as a movie version of the Andorian, but at least he'd be no stranger to spending time in heavy creature makeup. Reducing Star Trek Enterprise down to a movie may rob Shran of the bulk of his arc, meaning that his bond with Captain Archer may be formed after just one feature film. However, like Jeffrey Combs' Shran in Enterprise, Habba's gruff persona in Stranger Things belies a heart of gold. If David Habba brought some of Hopper to the role of Shran, then the relationship between the Andorian and Captain Archer could be one of the standout dynamics in an Enterprise movie reboot. Greg Tarzan Davis as Ensign Travis Mayweather. Up-and-coming actor Greg Tarzan Davis played LT JV Coyote Machado in Tom Cruise's Top Gun Maverick, so piloting a starship is a logical progression. On Star Trek Enterprise, Travis was never properly developed as a character. He had an interesting backstory as he was a space boomer, someone who was born in space and spent most of their life there. As a result of this, Travis was an adept pilot, but Enterprise rarely called on him to do much more than that, or explore his background as a space boomer. While an undeveloped character like Travis Mayweather may not seem like an obvious draw for someone who's worked with Tom Cruise, it could be a breakthrough role for Greg Tarzan Davis. A script that fleshed out Travis's backstory and made him more of an integral member of the Enterprise NX-01's crew could allow Greg Tarzan Davis to make the role his own. Not only that, but casting a Top Gun pilot as a Starfleet officer in a Star Trek Enterprise reboot movie would be good for the headlines. Ashley Park's riotous coming-of-age movie Joyride is a good demonstration of why she would be well cast as LT Hoshi Sato in a Star Trek Enterprise reboot movie. Joyride was a road movie that followed Park's Audrey as she traveled to China to try and connect with her birth mother. Joyride is a classic fish-out-of-water story which brilliantly plays with notions of cultural misunderstandings and personal identity. Ashley Park's role in it feels like solid training to play the Enterprise NX-01's groundbreaking translator and communications officer. More recently, Ashley Park appeared opposite Meryl Streep in Only Murders in the Building Season 3 as Kimber, a self-obsessed influencer and musical theater actress. What could have been an unlikable role was lifted by the vulnerability that Park brought to the character. Park's charisma as a performer and her ability to bring vulnerability to her outwardly confident characters makes her a good pick to play Hoshi Sato, Star Trek Enterprise's hyper-intelligent but insecure communications officer. Although he's still best known for the Hangover movies, that isn't why Zach Galifianakis would make a great Dr. Phlox. Star Trek Enterprise's Denobulan Doctor was memorably played by John Billingsley, who brought a great deal of warmth to the character. Dr. Phlox's species were one of the most fascinating and richly drawn alien races in all of Star Trek. From their polyamorous mating habits to their ability to puff out their faces when threatened, the Denobulans were a uniquely alien species. Zach Galifianakis' performances can occasionally be too arch, but his lovable dope routine in the Hangover movies and the Robert Downey Jr. road movie Due Date prove he can bring warmth when required. On top of this, Galifianakis' background in fringe comedy, working with the likes of Tim Heidecker and Eric Wareheim, would lend itself nicely to some of Dr. Phlox's more alien characteristics. John Billingsley proved that the role of Phlox needs an actor unafraid of looking silly, who also has exceptional comic timing, two things that Galifianakis has in spades. Fresh from his acclaimed performance as Patrick in Challengers, British actor Josh O'Connor would be great as LT, Malcolm Reed, in a Star Trek Enterprise reboot. Malcolm was a repressed and secretive character throughout Enterprise. O'Connor's terrific portrayal of the young Prince Charles in The Crown calls to mind the picture of Reed's stifling and strict family life in Enterprise, Season 1, Episode 12, Silent Enemy. An early role as a Russian submarine officer in Doctor Who also proved that O'Connor could convincingly portray a Starfleet tactical officer. Josh O'Connor's breakthrough role was in God's Own Country, playing a Yorkshire sheep farmer who falls in love with a Romanian migrant worker. O'Connor brought a physicality and darkness to the role that would be fascinating when transplanted to Star Trek Enterprise's Malcolm Reed. During Enterprise, it was rumored that Reed would be the first Star Trek LGBTQ+ character, but this never came to pass. O'Connor's performances in LGBTQ+ stories like God's Own Country and Challengers could help tease out this unexplored aspect of Reed's character in Enterprise. Austin Butler's most recent Sky-Fi role was the instantly memorable Fade Rotha in Dune Part 2, but Commander Trip Tucker is a more subdued proposition for the actor. Butler's performance as Elvis Presley and inability to shake the accent may have earned him a reputation as a slightly kooky method actor, but he's good at what he does. In both Elvis and The Bike Riders, Butler eschews a strange kind of charisma that, with the right script and direction, could make him a terrific Trip Tucker in a Star Trek Enterprise reboot. Trip Tucker was the most charismatic and instantly likable character in Star Trek Enterprise, meaning that Austin Butler would have a tall order to replicate Connor Trinneer's winning performance. From Manson family member in Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood to brutal Harkonnen family member in Dune Part 2, Butler has excelled at playing charismatic villains, but playing Trip would help him subvert audience expectations. Austin Butler's take on Connor Trinneer's Trip Tucker would therefore be more akin to his charismatic hero role in Steven Spielberg's Masters of the Air. Vulcans like Star Trek Enterprise's Sub-Commander T'Pol, Jolene Blalock, are often accused of being cold and unfeeling due to their emotional suppression. Alicia Vikander's breakthrough role as Ava in Alex Garland's Ex Machina proved that she's more than capable of Vulcan levels of emotional detachment. The Vulcan sub-commander is a hugely important character in Enterprise, not just because of T'Pol's romance with Trip, but because she was effectively Captain Archer's supervisor, keeping a watchful eye on humanity's first deep space exploration mission at the behest of the Vulcan High Command. The equally frosty and fiery dynamic between Archer and T'Pol would make for great character conflict in a Star Trek Enterprise movie. It's also possible that the screenwriters of an Enterprise remake may decide that Archer and T'Pol's dynamic would make a better will-they-won't-they romance than Trip and T'Pol, pleasing the Archer/T'Pol shippers. Alicia Vikander's strong track record of playing determined women like the android Ava or Lara Croft makes her the perfect choice for Enterprise's Vulcan crew member.